Welcome to Team Beauty Official. It's all about you, girl. Here we are, episode 5 in our series launching here in 2023. And I think you hear it in my voice, but I could not be more excited to have one of my BFFs, ride or die, inside of this business and truly a partner inside of everything that we do in Team Beauty. Welcome, Ms. Bryanna. How are you doing today?
I'm back for round 2. I'm ready.
Yes. For those of you who don't know, share, Bree, what would you share on the first round?
Yes. So for those who were tuned in the first time around, I really got to open up, share my story from the beginning, where I started, even though I didn't want to leave and I wanted to share more. But really sharing, how is it that I got started in here. And I was able to talk a little bit about, my family, how I grew up, and a little bit about my values. But today I really wanted to get into the other part of my life, I always say I fell in love when I came into this business, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that today.
Yes. So if you haven't heard Bryanna's story, make sure that right after you listen to today, you scroll down and you look for her episode. I believe it was episode
3.
3 on the first series. So the third one, you will find it Bryanna Lerma.
Yes.
And so today we're talking about our love language.
Yes.
Everything that has to do with love. And I am smiling from ear to ear. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can hear because love is one of my favorite subjects.
That's true. When I met you, you radiate it.
So, Bryanna, right? We're going to talk about, let's talk about marriage, men,
Everything.
self-love, everything that has to do with love. And let's start off with that, right? When you hear the word love or, before you were even married, let's take it back a little bit,
Yes.
right? How was that for you?
So personally, I did share in the first podcast, at the time my mom had already divorced my dad. They were like high school sweethearts. That definitely didn't work out. And like 8 years later, my mom did end up remarrying with my sister's dad. And that ended up being an abusive relationship. And I didn't have a really good relationship with my dad. He wasn't really a present father for XYZ reasons. But growing up, I used to think to myself, I was 15 and I was like, love doesn't exist. That was my actual thought. I was like, it doesn't exist. That's something for the movies. I had seen at the time a lot of my friends' parents divorce or not a good relationship. So I thought to myself, I was like, how's this going to work? I kind of want to have a baby someday. But I was just with the fear of what if he's like my dad and just leaves? What if it's an abusive relationship? I don't want that. And I remember expressing to my cousin one time, we're about 2 years different in age. And my aunt heard me and she told my mom, she's like, did you know that your daughter wants a prenup? She's already thinking of I ain't going to be with anybody. She's like, that's concerning. But that was my vision at the time of love was I don't really think it's existent.
And did you date a lot?
No.
No.
I was in high school, my philosophy was why do people want to have boyfriends and girlfriends? They just end up with a friend the next month, right? Mm-hmm. And that was I dated right as soon as I got out of high school, but I just didn't really believe in it. And even with my first boyfriend, it was puppy love, and that was about it.
So do you think it has to do a lot with your upbringing?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe those walls that were put up and even giving yourself a chance there?
Yeah, definitely. My boyfriend after that was, we were in a wedding together. He was the groomsman. I was one of the bridesmaids. Great friends. And they're like, do you see yourself marrying Bryanna? And he's like, yes. And I was like, oh, and I didn't say nothing. We were in a circle and I just stayed quiet. And we went home after that. And he's like, do you not see yourself marrying me? And I was like, we're young. I was like, you're thinking about that already? And I was like, we're just having fun. Yeah. The thought of marriage honestly scared me at the time. And so I gained weight.
And found Team Beauty.
And so I found Team Beauty. And honestly, being truthfully, once I got into Team Beauty, I fell in love with my coach. Okay, that's where we're
Say it
headed
again
to.
for the people
we
in the
fell
back.
in love with my coach. Okay.
By the way, that's not typical.
Yeah,
Okay, disclaimer. It's not typical that you will fall in love with your coach, but that's what happened to Bryanna.
Yeah, that's what happened to me. And at the time, it was very puppy love. And in my head, I'm like, oh, he's 10 years older than you. Like, this is
10
weird.
years older? Hey, that's another topic.
That's another topic for another day. But, when I came in, I saw you and Jerry, you're right here. Mm-hmm. I saw you and Diego, and I was like, wow, is that the possibility of what a marriage can look like? You had a family, and as months went by, like, I saw myself with a possible future with Draco, which he's my husband today. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, that's what it's supposed to look like. And so can you tell us a little bit about that, Jerry?
Oh, Bryanna. Well, yes, I could tell you a little bit of, how it was for me. I think very similar. I also come from a broken family. My parents got divorced. And not early on. My parents got divorced when I was about 21. They started to have, those problems. So yeah. I considered myself already old enough to know and understand. But regardless, that definitely created like a mental, what should I call it? I was going to beep. It really messed me up mentally, to think that, we were one big happy family and all of a sudden, like, you wake up and it's like this bad dream that you're having. And so, what I used to think was, when all of that was happening, like, for what? Yeah. What's the purpose of marriage? What's the purpose of, being with somebody for such a long time if they're going to end up cheating on you anyways? There was all these things, all the ones that you can imagine, the ones that you've thought about yourself as well if you're listening to this, right? Like, all of those things were in it. And I remember even having a conversation with my dad and telling my dad, like, you know what? Because of this, what does it even matter anyways? Like, for me to get married through the church, for you to walk me down the aisle, like, what? Like, I was literally dropping it all back on him. Like, what did it matter? And I remember I told him, like, I'm just going to pick a guy off the street if he's handsome and have babies with him. If he looks like somebody that I would want to have, and then I can choose another one and another one. Like, what's the point? And I was like rebelling so bad from the pain, from the hurt, that I personally felt that I had discarded that. Right. Yeah. And I do believe that, there is one God.
Yes.
And that, my whole life I've, brought up, believing in God. And I know that deep down in my heart, obviously, I didn't fully want that, or I didn't fully believe that. And so I do believe that God always protects and at the end has a final word, right?
Definitely.
And we go through that process. And so I ended up meeting my husband at a nightclub.
So fun.
And he was a rebound too.
Sorry, Diego.
We're not going to talk about this story. He's right here. He knows this story. But we don't have time for that. But he was a rebound. And I just said, if all goes wrong tonight, I'm just going to dance with that dude. He has pimples, but that's okay. He's tall and I'll dance with him. And we ended up bumping into each other and danced the night away, and that was that. And so before we get into this relationship stuff, Bryanna, pause. I know, you guys, it's getting juicy. Definitely, as we talk about love and, our personal expectations, that illusion, right? My mom, I remember being young and, my first boyfriends, I'd be like, it's because I love him. And she would be like, estás ilusionada, no es amor. Like, she would say, right, that I'm like living in this idea of what love is, or this idea of what love would be like, but not really like getting married and like having a family, right? And so that initial puppy love, it's like you feel you're dying the moment they break your heart, right? And so before we get into man love, okay, let's talk about self-love.
Yes.
Because I truly believe that in order for you to understand love maybe to another level, further than puppy love, or let's see where this relationship takes me, I do believe that we need to have self-love.
Yes, definitely. So with that being said, when I came in to like lose a weight, I tell people, like, a lot of people like to see the physical aspect of it, like, oh, you lost the weight and you look so good, and that's why he chose you, because he had some girls after him. And I could say, what's the difference besides like, oh, she looked good, was that personally I had lost weight, but internally, I felt so good. Internally, I love surrounding myself for women. And so nowadays, it's kind of like, like, oh, she wants to look good for her man. And yeah, great. But I tell people, like, no, I want to look good in the mirror for me. I want to look in the mirror and be like, yes, girl. And so it's like, when does it come to a point that as a mom, or not as a mom, I wasn't a mom at the time, I was single, it's like, I just wanted her to feel good for me and fill up my own cup for myself. And I thought that was something that was so important that I saw inside of my mom. Like, even though throughout her pain and what she was going through, it was like she knew that it was still a priority to put herself first. And that was something for me that, like, if love were ever, like you said, in the back of my mind, we knew, like, being alone was really not a thing. Like, deep down inside, I also knew, like, I wanted to find somebody. But knowing what I had seen in the past, it was important for me to stand on my own, to be like, I make my own money, and I
secure the bag, sis.
Yes,
secure the bag.
that I felt, secured. And so I think nowadays, it is so important as a woman to know that you stand 100% yourself, because a lot of times in marriages, they're like, hey, it's 50-50, right? And it's like, no. And we've seen now growing, it's like, you need to stand alone 100%. And it's not that you're leaving. It's not that, no, it's like, as a woman, can you 100% be like, I know who I am? I think sometimes as women, we struggle as the longer that you're with somebody, that it's easier to be like, oh, well, no, you need to stand 100% on your own to be able, like, I'm holding it down.
Yeah. And I think that's right here. I'm going to stop you because it's important what we're saying. Self-love, maybe even it sounds cliche, or you see it a lot on social media nowadays, right? Like, I do believe maybe 8, 9, 10 years back, we didn't really see that, right? Women empowerment, self-love. We really didn't see that as much as today. We see today. But if you don't know what that is, or maybe you're just starting on your personal journey and discovering yourself, what we're saying is, can you be 100% authentically whole yourself?
Yes.
Like, not that you need a man,
exactly,
right, to elevate you, to make you feel complete, but that you are complete on your own. And how do you discover, that?
Yeah.
How do you create and really unleash who you truly are, right?
Exactly.
There's these two things, and let's talk about them, Bree. There's borrowed identity and there's me.
Self-identity.
Self-identity. So what is borrowed identity?
So I would say borrowed identity, I've seen it within my circle of influence that I've whether grown up with people or acquaintances where, for example, this woman in my life, she's like, we were driving and she's like, I don't know where I am. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, I don't go anywhere without my husband. And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, I don't know, right? And she's like, we just done everything together since I was 18. And I was like, girl, we need to get out without him. We're like, that's great that you have him. But sometimes we become so dependent on who we are with somebody, which is great. We'll get into that. But it's like, you need to know how to stand alone. And I've always said, God forbid that anything happens. One of my friends was asking me, she's like, why do you insist on taking the water inside and flipping it over? It's so heavy. It's 5 gallons. She's like, because if one day I have to do it on my own, I need to know that I can do it on my own. And I told her, it sounds kind of funny, like, oh, a gallon of water. But I'm like, with everything in life. God forbid something happens to your husband, I'm like, I need to know how to change a tire. Jerry, do you know how to change a tire?
That I do not, but girl, I will call someone to come and do that for me.
But it was like in those like little things, right? That
Yeah.
I'm just like, I would like to know that if anything happens, that I could stand on my own, right?
Yes.
It's not taking anything away from him. He still does the water. He still does the car stuff. He still does those manly things, but at least knowing like, hey, I can do it if I got to do it. You know what I mean?
And it's showing up 100% you.
Yes.
Right? 100% you being good, being happy, being authentic, right? Not borrowing because someone says you're not this.
Exactly.
Or sit down, or you only serve as this, or, that's borrowed identity. We get used to allowing people to groom us, right, into something that we're not, that we lose ourselves and then be like, I don't know who I am, or I lost myself, right?
Exactly.
We say those things. And so nothing that we're saying here is true or false. It's our personal experience and our personal opinion.
Yes, definitely.
On, this topic. But truly feeling 100% whole, right, allows you to come into a relationship or even nurture your current relationship, in a more plumpy, happy state. Like, how awesome that you get to be 100% and that your husband gets to be 100%. I'll give you an example.
Go ahead.
Okay. We were talking about this earlier. It's like I had just had baby, right?
Yes.
Brand new marriage, brand new mom, and I'm in love. I'm in love, girl.
Everything's perfect.
I'm still in love right now, but I was in love. Like, I'll clean for you, baby. I'll cook for you. All these things that lasted a couple months. After that, it started to become a little overwhelming, right? I started to lose myself. Less showers, less real clothes, lived in pajamas, all this stuff. Baby latched to me. And then my man gets up, goes to the gym, eats good, dresses good, showers daily. And I'm looking at him and I'm like feeling, what's the word? Resentment. Like, I'm feeling so like, F this guy. Like, he doesn't care about me. He doesn't love me. He doesn't care how I feel. Like, I'm creating all of these things in my
own head.
Then I'm picking fights. Like, okay, where do you think you're going like that? Right? Like, you start to, because I was being a lazy ass. That's the truth. Like, because I had already put an idea in my mind that he had to serve me. Yeah. Because I was going through postpartum and we were supposed to be going through this together and like all of these things, and getting upset at him for being 100%. Like, he has been 100%. He knew what he wanted. He knew his work. He knew, his responsibilities. Yeah. And, I had to come to a term where, like, it's not his fault that I don't want to take a shower. Like, is he supposed to shower me? So that, it was like a rapid thing, but, it was very hard on me when I realized, like, you know what? That is why issues are caused. Even my own insecurity from the past, I used to check his phone all the time, like, is there a message? Like, I'm going to find it. Trust me, girl. My mom, we're FBI agents. And so
I think every girl is.
From the past experience, right? It's like, if the guy puts his phone down, you're already thinking like, he's hiding something, right? Whenever you're
just
traumatized. Traumatized. And so I had to heal from that, to respect my man, to trust my man, and to know, like, girl, get 100% here. Because if you're 100%, then they're obviously loving you
at your best. And when we're not at our best, it's so easy to almost to come into this victim mindset of, like, like you said, like, everything that's happening. And so in order to, I would say, to be able to trust, in order to be able to feel loved at the max capacity, I would say it's knowing who you are, self-loving you. And that goes for our men as well. You know, I would say I have a very confident man. He knows, you know, who he is, what he likes. You know, like you said, that 100%, like they're doing what they got to do to be them. And that's what we originally were attractive to, which I think is so important.
Yeah, I was totally attracted to that. And then I was getting mad at that, right? And so whose problem was that?
Ours.
Thank God I realized it. But if you're listening, you know, ask yourself those questions, right? Like, where am I in my self-love? Truly, like, not trying to go and find somebody, but like, who am I, me, myself? Am I able to be happy on my own, eat on my own, you know, travel on my own? Like, do you know what you want, what you like, what makes you happy? Discover that part, you know, throughout this challenge, so you can truly like be free.
Yeah.
Right. In you and everything that you are. And then in the relationship, right, in the man love, right, what do you want in a man, right? Not just like, oh, I want a date, take me out to dinner, pay for my food type of thing, right?
Yeah.
Take me out to dance.
That's the surface stuff. We need to get into the deep stuff.
What do you want in a man?
And I think as far as that goes, you know, what exactly is it that what exactly is it that you're looking for in your man? It's like those boundaries have to be set at the beginning of the relationship. And so
hold on.
Yeah.
First, we have to have a letter.
Yeah.
Like, I had a whole page.
I put mine in my Bible and I prayed.
Literally, mine was like tall.
Mine was black hair.
Left-handed.
Green eyes.
Six-pack. That's the superficial stuff,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Man of God, family man, hard worker, right? And like, I'm not going to keep going, but like, you need to have everything.
Yeah, and specific. And so as I have, because I had my list, in my list, because I came from a small, broken family, I had written in mind that I wanted a husband who had a big family. My husband's dad has 13 brothers and sisters. His family is massive. I went to like a family barbecue and they're loud. I'm a little bit timid. And my mother-in-law said, you know, brace yourself, have tough skin. And I was like, why? I didn't want to get off the truck. And she's like, well, we're a big family and it all comes out of love. And I was scared, but it was a lot of fun. And I braced myself.
Yes, yeah. Bree, because imagine you're an introvert and you're like, I don't like to go out. I don't like nothing. And then you marry a guy that's like, he's all about, you know, his family has parties every weekend, you know, all this stuff. That's important too.
Yeah. So I would say, you know, that was on my list, that he was a family man, he's family oriented. And so, you know, it's important, like you said prior to this, like, I'm just going to pick a random guy and be like, he's cute. I think as women early on, I did that. I'm like, he's cute.
For sure. Guilty.
But his qualities as a man were awful, right? The way he talked to you, like that was something that was big to me, right? And so even as an example to that, like my husband is very expressive. And I remember early on in our relationship, we were like, had an argument. He got really upset and I was like, and I got upset and I was like, don't talk to me like that. And he's like, what? And I was like, don't talk to me like that. I didn't like that. And he's like
in a loud form.
In a loud, like I felt like he was getting in my face. And then I was like, don't talk to me like that. Don't ever like try and get in my face. And he's like, what did you think I was going to do? And I was like, I don't even want to imagine that. And he's like, and I'm like, but don't ever do it again or we're done.
And you had to explain to him why.
Yeah, and I did. After I was like, I'm walking out and I'll walk back in, right? And so when we sat down and I talked about it, I told him that these are like, you know, early signs. He's like, I would never do that. And I was like, no, I'm just telling you, like, these are my boundaries. This is what I saw growing up. So if that's like an issue, then maybe we don't have anything here. And he was like, what? And I'm like, but I'm being honest. I do not want to be talked to like that. And so sometimes, right, he'll get like riled up and he's like, I need a minute. Like, wait, right? Like pause in the argument and then come back to it and sit down and be able to talk about it. I think that's a very important part of communication. In your list, write it down. I want to have somebody who I can communicate with because we've come to the point where some people are like, no, sorry, kiss me, love me, and we're done. And then those problems can be shoved under the carpet, and we don't want that because that can cause some serious problems in your relationship.
Know everything that you want in a man. Write it down if you have to, for all my single ladies out there that don't
he's out there.
Yes, we promise you that he's already been separated and for you, okay?
Yes.
And know your standards. Like, what are my standards, right, that I want in a man? Like,
what were your standards, Jerry? Tell us.
Why do you want to know everything about me?
Because you are the example.
I did have standards on what I wanted, what I didn't want. I knew who I was. I'm a very emotional person, right? So I personally, was someone that was like, I'm going to wait, right, until. And it was very hard because we were older, but that was for me, and having those standards of, what you're willing to do, when you're out as a couple, right? What type of man you're trying to look for. Sometimes I'll give you an example. Like sometimes my husband would say things like, well, at least I'm not, let's say, drunk doing this, right? And I would say, well, I don't want that, at least, right? I want us to be who we're meant to be, not like comparing myself to another person or another couple, right? And so really knowing in my relationship what I wanted and what I didn't want. Also, your personal experience, right? You've seen your parents, right? And I think our parents are people that love us and did the best that they could for us up to this point, right? And you were able to see, like, I love this in my parents' marriage. There's a lot of things that I loved when my parents were together, right? And then also things that I'm like, I do not want to bring that into my personal relationship, right? So having standards as a woman too, like I'm not always going to say yes to you because you're a man, there are things that, just like there's things that he has, there's things that I have that, are my personal standards. And boundaries, right? Boundaries, establishing them early on so it's not too late and then you're trying to fix a stranger.
You gave me one of the best marriage advice when I got married. Do you want to hear it?
Yes. What is it?
So I thought something that was so great at my bridal shower that you told me was that he's going to come from his family and have his core values, and you're going to come from yours. And doesn't mean that you have to adopt all of his and that he has to adopt all of you. You guys will create your own. And I was like, wow, blown away when you told me that. And that was one of the first things that we actually did when we moved in together, because we didn't live together before we were married. And so, which I don't think there's anything wrong if you do, but if you start a serious relationship with somebody as far as moving in, I think that is something that is so important, that as you go into that new apartment, that new space as a couple, that you sit down and say, these are my boundaries. What are your boundaries, right? It's important to know theirs and create together. This is what our life's going to look like, but we communicate it instead of like, oh, we moved in together and he falls asleep with the TV on and I hate it. I don't know.
That or like me, those things were like, for me, I remember early on in my marriage, Diego would call me from the gym and he would be like, I'm ready. I'm coming home. I just left the gym. And that meant I'm coming home, have food ready. Okay. And at the beginning, it was like, yes, woo. Like I didn't really think anything about it, right? And that's what he was used to. Like whenever he called home, it was like food was ready and on the table. And one day I was like, I heard the garage open. I remember like it was yesterday, babe. He's here in the back. So I can't lie, you guys. I remember like it was yesterday. I heard the garage zzz, and I was like, shit, I forgot to start making food. So like I go to the kitchen and I get the pan and I start turning it on. He walks in and he like his face like, my food? That's what I called you for. And I was like, wait a minute. this is not going to happen here. And it was like, I wasn't going to keep going with that, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, it's not going to be like that all the time. Like, and I don't want you to be getting mad at me because the food's not on the table yet.
Yeah.
Chill. It'll be here in 20 minutes. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to be that person that you call and like, when you get here, ooh, magically, like,
Yeah. Is there
Betty Crocker, right? Like, no. So after that, you know, communication, obviously, again, right?
Yeah.
Setting the boundary and like, I'm your wife and we get to do this together. We can cook like for each other. Today it's awesome because we just have meal preps, right? And I'll make us a egg sandwich here and there. But like, it was kind of like, I'm not gonna be that for you. Like, I'm here for so many other things, not just that. And I had to voice it. So those are boundaries, right? And I wasn't, and that's awesome because once you know what attracts you in a man, what you want in a man, and what you're willing to live with for the rest of your life, then you're able to come in wholly. So before we go into the next part, right, I would just want to share with everyone that it's kind of like, imagine yourself being in a relationship where you get to do everything that makes you happy. He does all of the things that make him happy. And you get to build your world, right? The way that both of you want. Build your family, build your legacy, and legacy and success comes different for so many people, but it's in how you raise your children, the values and standards in your home, you know, like so many things. And it's not like two separate people just coming together for, you know, just for simple attraction.
Which I think happens sometimes. I know I have women on my team that are like, one day I just woke up and like it felt like we were roommates, and she's like, how did I get to that point to where like he comes home from work, I come home from work, and we cook dinner and we eat, but we're both on our phones and we go to sleep? And I'm like, oh girl. And she's like, yeah, I wasn't like living a true marriage. So
God for sure has been something that, you know, we can't ignore that in our relationship. He definitely has brought it together. But also the second thing is self-love. Like, my man has self-love. And I, you know, learned through this journey how I can nurture and nourish, you know, self-love and understanding where you get it from. That's the third element that Bree and I want to talk about is, okay, you know, now don't go searching for your man, okay? Like, you write the qualities, write your list, girl, and pray to Jesus.
Yes, exactly.
And he'll bump into you along the way as you work on yourself, right?
Definitely.
But you know, how can I have that, right? Where sometimes people can't even get over like the previous relationship.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was borrowed identity. Like, they made them. It wasn't like, this is not what I want. It's like they kicked you to the curb and now you don't know how to act type of thing, right?
Yeah.
So,
and they go back to the, but I used to, and this used to, and he used to.
You can't bring the old garbage, right? So you have to self-love. Okay. So let's get centered around that. There's this thing called the love language.
Yes. I didn't even know about that.
When
I met you. All my first one.
Well, Bree got here when she was 21.
I was 21.
Yeah.
I was still a baby.
Yeah.
So I came in, and when obviously I feel when you do start in your relationship, it's like love all the way. And I call it the puppy love stage. So me and my husband at the time, boyfriend, were like that full year. We're like puppy love, hardcore. Nothing could go wrong. You can't say anything wrong. And then the second year kicked in and I'm like, who am I with? And at that time, you had asked me, well, what's your love language? And do you know what his love language is? And I'm like, what is that? And I was so grateful that there's actually an exam that you can take online for your love language.
We will link it.
And, you know, and that's how you will find out how your significant other likes to be loved. And
that's how you can nurture love too. Right?
Exactly. And so for my husband, his was words of affirmation. So like if he combs his hair and he comes out of the bathroom and I don't say nothing, he's like, you don't like my hair. And I'm like, what? It looks great. Or if he worked out at the gym, or, you know, sometimes we speak on stages and he'll get off and I can see it in his eyes like, are you going to tell me, did I do good? Right? And that is definitely how he likes to be loved.
I love the way you cut the yard.
Anything and everything.
I love how you can carry those 10 bags from HEB straight in.
And you can just see it like immediately that he accepts it and feels loved. And for me, it is acts of service. When he takes out the trash, I was like, oh yeah, he did it. When he does anything around the house, and those are things that are important to him, or when he opens my door, like those things, I'm like, he loves me.
So let's go through the 5 love languages.
Let's do it.
Okay. For those of you that are hearing this for the very first time, we have words of affirmation, which is what Bree just talked about. Words of affirmation. Let's give some examples, Bryanna.
So words of affirmation. Gery looks so good today. I love your outfit.
Thank you.
You did amazing on stage.
Thank you.
All of those make them feel so special inside.
Words of affirmation, acts of service,
Taking out the trash, washing the dishes,
washing your car,
washing the car, pumping
filling
gas.
Oh yeah, I like that.
Filling your car up with gas, and you come home and it's already filled up.
Yeah. Okay. Gifts, materialistic stuff.
Diamond. Flowers, gifts.
That's, for example, gifts. It's kind of like they told you looked beautiful. They wrote you a poem. They took out the trash, everything. It's your birthday. They cooked for you. And you're like, where's my gift? That is your love language. Okay. You are expecting something.
Which I would like to add that I feel that Hollywood, right, like the media told us and sold us that gift giving that's how a man told you he loved you. And so, like, I see a lot of girls are like, well, isn't that what's expected? Like, isn't he supposed to give me a gift because of what we see? But the reality is, like, as long as he did something for me, I'm great.
Correct. So imagine a guy that gave you a gift. He went all out, right? Like, buying you this gift. And then you're like, and...
my door?
Yeah. So that's gifts. There's nothing wrong with gifts. You should identify, though, if that is your... And we all have a little bit of everything, but there's one that you're like, this one.
Make it or break it.
Then we have quality time. These are the people that are usually like, we never spend time together, and I want to spend time. That's quality time.
That's like a deal breaker. If he's not willing to spend time with you, you're like, it's over.
You and him by yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Quality time. And then we have physical touch.
Your favorite.
That's me. Physical touch. I have to be, touching. Okay. So if he's not holding my hand, my leg, touching my foot, hair, something,
it's done.
You don't love me. So even like, since I'm physical touch, you'll also find me usually like, my hand are usually...
We were in the car one time and Gery was holding my leg. And so I looked down at her and she said, do you not want me to touch you? I said, sorry, my family doesn't touch much.
So that's awkward, right? Because it's like, that's not her thing, right?
I was like, okay.
Love language, right? Know how you love to be loved, right? Love language, words of affirmation, acts of service, gifts. That's going to be your homework today and for this week is really understand what your personal love language, because how can we go out there and expect to be loved first and foremost if you don't even know how you want to be loved, right? We have this idea. So,
and important when you meet somebody, how do they want to be loved? Because sometimes we want to give our own love language and we're like, oh, if I do for him and I do for him. And he's just like, okay, but his love language is touch and you don't touch him all day long. He's going to be like, this chick's not into me.
Correct. Yes. Or if his was words of affirmations and you're like, you suck. Right? Like, you don't do anything right, or could you have done this, right? Like, all of that is, my husband always say that's abuse. more than physical abuse to
Yeah.
them, because they're words of affirmation.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't matter if I like punch him, that's nothing to him
Yeah.
if I'm telling him something that's very hurtful.
Exactly.
So that is very powerful, Bryanna. Inside of this love world,
Yes.
is understanding our love language. And I'll let you end, Bree, but there's one thing that someone told me, a psychologist told me, how are you, right? It was something for my son, of course, but the one that needed the psychology was me. And she said, how are you? So I described myself, who I was. I usually run out the door. Sometimes I forget my purse, or this, or, I'm always in a rush. And how's your husband? Well, he's very patient, never forgets anything, like never skips a beat, always like good with his checklist, all this stuff, right? I described him. And she's like, well, don't you think your son is like a combination of you both? And I was like, yeah. And because I was wondering why he was like just running out the door or whatever, right? And it was like, you are like that too, right? Yes. And she's like, how about you just try loving him the way that you want to be loved?
Aww.
And that was the best thing that, could give me peace for my children, for my relationship, because it's like when you do understand what makes you happy, when you understand that you are a full own person of your own, with dreams, with goals, with wants, with needs, and then you carry that into creating that in existence with somebody else, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we both get to move forward understanding that, right? That's why we go to church, right? That's why we believe in a higher power.
Yes.
That's why, we have goals, dreams, purpose, all these things. All of that starts to make sense in our world. So give to people the way that you want to give. Sometimes we're like, oh, he never did this for me. Like Valentine's, right? There's all these memes. How are we on time, babe? I know we're totally having fun with this podcast. But there's all these memes, right, that say like Miley Cyrus' new song, Flowers, right? Like, I can buy myself. How does it go?
I can write my name in the sand.
So they're like, oh, don't be expecting flowers if you can buy your own self flowers. And it's like, I don't believe that that's what we mean, or that's what she meant. I believe that she meant that she like came into understanding how she could be whole without anybody, right? And so if the flowers come, welcome.
Yeah.
If the gifts come, if the quality comes, if the date night comes, right? Welcome.
Yeah.
And so learn to be whole and understand what makes you full and happy. Work on that self-love. So whenever you bump into the love of your life, right?
You're ready
to serve, baby. And to be, and to truly continue, right? Stepping into that power.
Definitely, Gery. And so as we're closing out here our podcast, I hope that you enjoyed it, because we had a lot of fun. But more than anything, if you're listening and you're like, I don't know who I am, whether you're in a relationship or you're not in one, I invite you to find that self-love, to say, you know what, after listening to this, I might have some work to do. And that's absolutely okay, because none of us are perfect. But that's why we are a part of a women empowerment group. That's why we come together and we are communicated through group chats, in person if it's in your city. And so I invite you to take on the role of this challenge of saying, you know what, I'm looking for self-love. Or if you don't have a significant other and you're like, I love myself, I'm ready for that someone, then to say, write down those qualities and set out those boundaries and expectations that you do expect. But I've had so much fun, Gery. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Make sure to tag us at Team Video Official. Yes. Take the love language test and share with us in the chat on IG what you discovered through this week about yourself with this podcast.
We love you guys.
We love you.